age 37. I have been married to Thomas, age 41. My husband and I have had a boring marriage. We were good to each other because we treated each other as friends. There were times when we went about not seeing each other due to our busy schedules for days. There were never any arguments about anything in particular between us. I think us being busy was what kept our marriage without falling for the longest time. I was a nurse, and he was a salesman. We both had erratic work hours and schedules, which made it very hard for us to find time for each other. Having kids was a topic we both dreaded. Being a nurse for kids was more than enough for me to be scared of having kids of my own. I would encounter kids with all sorts of complications, which hardened my resolve not to have kids of my own. Thomas had been quite understanding about it, as he knew that having kids would add to the expense, and we were not ready to take up extra expenses. We both mutually agreed on not having any kids, which upset both of our folks. But it was what it was. We were content with our decision and focused on building a strong foundation for our relationship. We filled our lives with adventures, hobbies, and quality time together, cherishing the freedom and flexibility that not having children allowed us. Our friends and family eventually came to understand and respect our choice, realizing that happiness can be found in different ways for different people. Very soon it got boring, and we started living our separate lives. In a few years, we became distant, and then Thomas did something unexpected that changed our lives forever. Thomas and I had very busy work schedules, which led to us seeing each other less than we previously did. Thomas had to make enough sales to keep his job and also manage our mortgage. Due to COVID and its after effects, I would mostly be tired after coming home, so sex was out of the question. There were times we would go about 15 days or even a month without sex. I would feel guilty about not being able to do my duties as a wife, but then again, nothing can beat sleep deprivation. Our days together mostly consisted of Thomas convincing me to have sex and me telling him how hard I had worked all day and just wanted to rest in peace and quiet. It was the same thing again and again. It was as if even our off days had a routine of their own. It was not always like this, though. When we started dating, we were so madly in love with each other that I would sneak Thomas to one of our empty lab rooms and make out with him. I don't know what happened as the years passed. The spark was lost, and we mostly focused on our careers and less on each other. We became consumed by our professional ambitions, prioritizing work over our relationship. The constant hustle and bustle left little room for romance and intimacy, causing the initial passion to fade away. We were finally free to get some time together with each other when I had a few days off, and Thomas had a long weekend to himself without any sales. So we decided to live a little the way we did when we were dating. We made plans and went out with friends. We were drinking and talking nonsense. We had about 4 rounds of beer and were half drunk. As we were on the 5th round, Thomas said in front of everyone that it had been almost 2 months since we had sex, and he wasn't expecting to have sex for at least a year at the rate we were going. Everyone started laughing, including me. But deep down, I was angry at how he could reveal such intimate information in front of all our friends. We were trying to mend our relationship, but Thomas and his loud mouth were not helping at all. I decided that this cannot go unpunished. I definitely did not want him to spill any more bedroom secrets in the future. I knew I had to address the issue privately with Thomas, expressing my discomfort and setting boundaries regarding our personal matters. It was important for us to establish a mutual understanding and respect each other's privacy, ensuring that our intimate details remained between us. We went home, and as usual, he tried to have sex with me. I pushed him away and told him that he was not going to get any sex at least for a year from now, just like he had predicted. He tried to reason with me, but I pushed him away and went to bed. He was too tired and drunk, so he went to sleep immediately. I was on leave for the next few days, and every day, he tried to convince me to have sex with him. I did feel bad, but every time I was about to agree, I would remember what he did at the club. This instantly angered me, and I would give a vague excuse to get myself out of the situation. This went on for 3 days that I was on leave. On the 4th day, he came in and walked directly to the bedroom. I was startled by his sudden intrusion and immediately sat up in bed, demanding to know what he was doing. His expression was filled with remorse as he apologized for his past behavior and admitted that he had been seeking forgiveness. I was determined to teach him a lesson so that he does not repeat the same mistake again. It was strange that he did not even greet me. He showered and got ready. He smelled really nice, but I did not want to give in to the temptation. He asked me how he looked, to which I replied that he looked swoon-worthy, but he was still not going to get any sex. He smiled and said that he got it covered. I assumed that he might have worked hard to sweep me off my feet and apologize. I decided to get myself ready and be presentable when it happened. I showered and wore my best-looking dress, which enhanced my features. He looked puzzled at my sudden enthusiasm. I decided to act as if I had my own stuff to do to keep up the shock value. I was almost ready when the doorbell rang and he rushed to open the door. There was a woman at the door, looking incredibly hot, who winked at him. He took her straight to our room and closed the door behind them. My heart sank as I stood there, feeling a mix of betrayal and disappointment. It became clear that his apology was never going to come, and I realized that I deserved someone who would truly sweep me off my feet and value my presence. I followed them and saw that the room was not locked. I knocked, but there was no answer, so I decided to barge in. I had to know what was going on in my house. I saw him shirtless, and the woman who walked in was taking her dress off. I asked him what all this was, and he said, like he mentioned, he got everything covered. He was fine, that I did not want to have sex, as he now realized that he did not need me to have sex. He found this really interesting proposal and met this woman who was willing to be his companion tonight. I was taken aback by his nonchalant way of telling me all this, as if it was all such a common occurrence. He did not even care about how I would feel about all this. He said that he had things to do, and if I did not mind, closed the door while leaving them alone. They continued undressing, and I did not know what to do, so I closed the door and went into the guest bedroom. I couldn't sleep the entire night as I could hear sounds and whispers from our bedroom. I tried to put my ear to the wall to listen to what they were up to. I don't know if he was really enjoying himself or just moaning too loudly to make me jealous. Maybe it was all just an act and nothing was actually happening there. I couldn't be sure until I saw it for myself. He came to the dinner table in the morning to get his coffee. I was already sitting there waiting for him as his companion had left about an hour ago. I had been waiting for the past hour, dreading to go to the bedroom as I was not ready to witness him naked after spending a night with another woman. He came and kissed me on my forehead as if nothing happened. He smiled at me and said that he had a wonderful time last night and asked me if I had a good sleep. Really, was he being serious right now? How could he even ask me that after almost causing me to have a mental breakdown? I just kept staring at him in disbelief, looking at him being so casual about it. There was no guilt or shame that he felt after what he did last night. He got ready as usual and went to work as if it was normal to sleep with another woman in the bedroom when your wife is right in front of you. I went to work but obviously could not focus on what I was doing. My job required me to be present more than 100% as people's lives depended on my actions. I decided to leave early and brainstorm a little on how to handle this issue with my husband. There was no use staying at the hospital when my mind was running all over, which could lead to serious blunders from my end. I went home and started thinking of where it all went wrong, that he had to take such a step and not even feel guilty about it. The more I thought, the more it became clearer about the night at the club where it all started. I recalled how he had been distant and unresponsive that night, spending most of his time engrossed in conversation with a mysterious woman. It was then that I realized the potential catalyst for his actions. Perhaps there was more to this situation than met the eye. As I delved deeper into my thoughts, I couldn't help but wonder if there were underlying issues in our relationship that we had failed to address. I decided to make up for it and apologize to Thomas for not bothering about his feelings for so long. No one other than me had any right to sleep with my husband. I prepared the bed and the bathroom to make it smell romantic. I lit candles and played soft music to enhance the romantic mood. I waited for Thomas to come home to the surprise. The doorbell rang and I checked myself in the mirror before opening the door. There he was, half drunk and with a new woman. He just pushed me aside and made his way to the bedroom with her. They went in and locked the door. The next morning, Thomas came and kissed me. He even thanked me for understanding his needs and decorating the bedroom for him and his friend last night. My mouth was wide open at his way of processing things. I was not doing all of that for him to sleep with a random woman. I think he knew me well enough to not come to such a stupid conclusion. Was he just trying to push me farther away by doing all of this? I did not really understand why he had to behave this way. And tonight I had decided that it would be a battle to regain my control over Thomas. He was my husband, and there was no way I would let things slip out of my hand. He wants sex, so sex is what he would get, but from me and not from anyone else. I was fully prepared for Thomas to show up and give him an ultimatum for his actions. I waited and slept on the couch itself. He never showed up. I woke up at 6 a.m. and gave him a call. He picked it up and I could tell that he was completely out of it. I was asking him where he was and if I should come pick him up. I could hear faint voices of a girl beside him. I tried to ask random things just to listen to the person beside him. He told me that he was fine and would be home for lunch. Before he hung up, I could make out that the person beside him was Karen, who was one of our mutual friends and who always had eyes for Thomas. I was devastated knowing that now he had started sleeping around with friends. How could he not think of what people would talk about us once all of this came to light? Was he so desperate for sex that he would be ready to sleep around with any person who shows even a tiny bit of interest in him? And how could Karen do such a thing? She was my friend after all. Even if Thomas was the one who suggested it, could she not have the sense to deny it? I couldn't jump to conclusions just by a few whispers. I decided to drive to Karen's house to confirm it. On my way, I kept praying for it not to be true. I had scenarios running in my head about it being true and imagining them making out. I shook my head and tried to focus on the road. I reached, and there in the corner was Thomas's car. Without thinking, I went and rang the bell. Karen opened it, and I could tell by her expression that I was the last person she wanted to see. I went inside without a word and saw Thomas sleeping in her bed with barely any clothes. Anger is not even the word that could describe what I was feeling. I snatched away the quilt and pushed Thomas to wake up. He got up with a start and looked at me. He hugged me and was going back to sleep when I asked him to see where he was. He opened his eyes and looked at Karen, and then at me. He looked at the condition he was in and understood what must have happened last night. He told me that he never knew Karen was so good at sex. I mean, really? I started throwing things at him, which he dodged successfully. He stopped me and asked me what was wrong. Could he not know what was wrong? I was not his girlfriend anymore for him to toy around with me. I demanded an explanation, and he said that he understands my point of not always being available for sex, and he respects it. He doesn't want to burden me with it, so he found a solution. This helps him with his sexual needs and does not even put pressure on me for having sex with him. According to him, it was a win-win situation for the both of us. He told me to calm down and think about it. I was fuming with anger and told him that he could enjoy all the sex he wants to with Karen or any other woman because I don't care anymore. I was done putting up with his nonsense and now I didn't want to carry on with it. I gave Karen a disappointing look and walked out of the door, slamming it shut. I sat in my car and started crying. How could my life turn out this way? Thomas was the most responsible and loyal person I had known. How could he sleep with so many women and not even feel sorry about it? I was lost for words. I am writing all this sitting in my car, as I don't think I am in the right frame of mind to drive my car. All of the good times that I had with Thomas keep flashing in front of my eyes, as I am still in denial regarding the treatment Thomas is letting me go through. I would request you to give me suggestions on how to get my life back on track after such a fiasco. Update. Here is an update to what has happened ever since Thomas has been getting every random girl home whenever I was free. I left the house that I shared with Thomas, just like a few of you suggested. I started focusing on myself and living my life the way I wanted to. I went out with my friends over the weekend to a club and saw Thomas kissing a girl not older than 21 on the dance floor. It was very awkward for both me and my friends to see Thomas this way. I thought he would ignore us, but he came to us and sat with us. He even joked about finding other avenues if you are not happy with your partner and not feel guilty about it. I was sitting right there, so how could he openly say things like that? I was done being patient and decided to hit the dance floor. I scouted a young guy myself and started dancing with him. I got close to the young guy to show Thomas that he was not the only one who was capable of doing all of this. It was like we were competing against each other to show that we didn't care. We could see the jealousy in each other's body language, but denied that we wanted to be together. The entire night we tried too hard to irk each other and show that we could live happily without each other's support. The next day I got up with a throbbing headache. I had way too many drinks. I recollected last night's events and saw a spark of anger in Thomas's eyes when I was dancing with another guy. He did care about who I was with. It was just that he was angry and wanted me to acknowledge it. I sure as hell was not happy seeing Thomas with anyone else. We were living separately, and we both knew that it was all temporary. We had been married to each other for 15 years and knew that by now we kind of developed a bond that we couldn't share with anyone else. Even though I had been living separately, never once did the thought of divorce cross my mind. I knew how to make things right. I decided to have a heart-to-heart conversation with Thomas about it. I told him that I truly loved him and would do anything to make sure that he stops behaving this way towards me. I even agreed to have an open marriage with him if he is suffering so much without sex that I have not been able to provide. I know you guys are going to judge me for opening my marriage and all that. Trust me. It does not make me happy, but I guess this is the only way I would be able to keep Thomas by my side. There is nothing else I can think of that can save my marriage. Many of you might be disappointed by my decision, but this is the only way out as I see it. Update. It has been a week since I decided to forget everything Thomas had done in order to spite me. We have started afresh and things have been very smooth between us. I must say that the once-in-a-while appearance of a new face in the bedroom is an idea that I am still not used to, but it was not as bad as I thought. I am actually glad about the idea of an open marriage, as it takes off the pressure of having sex with Thomas when I don't want to. The best part is that he gets a girl, they have sex, and she leaves. There is no emotional dependence or any drama that I would have to deal with. It is better than Thomas having an affair and asking me for a divorce. Right now, I am truly happy in my marriage, where I have the controls and I can make it work in my favor. Thomas and I mutually decided on the girl that he could bring home, and I would have my alone time that day with myself. The next morning would be just me and Thomas together working as a team to better our marriage. I wish we could have done this sooner so that we would have had a much more beautiful marriage all this while. I know that most of you might be disappointed by my decision to stay with Thomas, even after sleeping around with so many women. I should have separated and found a better man, but trust me, it is better to live with the devil you know than go searching for a new unknown one. As long as Thomas sticks to his promise of only sex and no emotional connection with all of his companions, I think it would all be okay. I know for a fact that no other woman would be able to put up with Thomas and his weird demands if they would have to live with him. I guess that is how I am going to proceed with my marriage going forward. I take a keen interest in choosing the girl that Thomas would be having fun with, and gives me enough control on the situation. This also sends a message to the women that I am willing with all of this, and Thomas would do things only by taking my approval. Even I would have fun once in a while with a man of my choice after seeking Thomas's approval. It was only right if both of us reaped the benefits of this open marriage. This has opened a new avenue of happiness which does not require us to feel pressured or burdened to keep each other happy. We could delegate the sex part to others, and when we needed to have a heartfelt conversation, we always had each other to fall back on. We were enjoying this phase of our lives, which helped us focus both on our careers and also on things that needed focusing. I thank all of you for being a part of my journey from a disastrous marriage to a successful one. I would not have been able to keep sane and do all of this without your opinions and suggestions. Thank you so much for sticking with me all this time and making sure that I make the right decisions. I would suggest anyone going through a rough patch in their marriage, especially due to sexual issues, to give open marriage a go. I understand that it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it might just be the right thing to improve your marriage. If the sole problem is time for sex, then definitely try it out and see how it goes. The disclaimer is to make sure that there is no emotional involvement whatsoever to make sure that you always have an upper hand. Life is unpredictable because a single mistake has ruined my life. Nothing makes sense to me anymore. How I wish I could turn back the hands of time. How I wish I never attended the family Christmas party. How I wish I never got drunk that very night. but it's too late now. Life seems to be turning against me. It's a very painful story, and I don't know how to tell the story without feeling very bad. The horrible mistake I made has destroyed my whole life. Hi guys, my name is Cynthia, and I'm a 28-year-old hairdresser. I'm married to a pilot. His name is Scott. Scott and I have been married for 2 years now. We met 2 years ago, and ever since it's been a fairy tale until I made a terrible mistake a few months ago. Scott is every woman's dream man, handsome, tall, kind, and caring. Sometimes I wondered what he saw that made him fall in love with me. Scott's dad didn't want him to get married to me. He tried matchmaking him to different ladies, but Scott refused and chose to be with me. He practically changed my life within a short period. He is a perfect gentleman. I always describe him as my soulmate. He is one of the best things that has ever happened to me. That's why I can't forgive myself for accidentally kissing his dad. Don't judge me, guys. I was drunk. Everything happened so fast that I don't even know how it happened. It still feels like a dream. How could I make that kind of mistake? Scott's dad has always been the villain in our love story. I will be referring to him as Mr. Alex, not his real name though. I want to keep his identity private because he is a popular businessman. Mr. Alex, Scott's dad, never liked me. He always told me I wasn't good enough for his son. He always called me a gold digger who came to reap where I didn't sow. He always wanted Scott to marry one of his friend's daughters, but Scott declined. Mr. Alex never misses any opportunity to remind me how low class I was, and I'm not worthy of being his daughter-in-law because I wasn't from a rich home. My parents were just retired civil servants. Mr. Alex never misses any chance to tell me he doesn't like me. That's why it hurts so much that I let my guard down around him. I can't even believe I kissed him. It still feels surreal. Thinking about it now, it was disgusting. Everything happened so quickly. Scott and were invited for his family Christmas party. Scott was very excited because his father stopped talking to him ever since we got married. Mr. Alex went as far as not attending our wedding. So you can imagine how thrilled Scott was when he got the invitation to the party. He was also asked to bring me along to the party. Initially, I didn't want to attend because I know I will not be welcomed, but Scott insisted we attend. He told I might never get this type of opportunity again and that his family is beginning to accept me. He said I should use this opportunity and get to meet everyone because it's the holidays and everyone will be around. I reluctantly agreed to attend the party, but I wished I never did. I wished I stood my ground and just slept at home on that fateful night. I love Scott so much, I could never tell him no. Scott has been through a lot because of me. At a point I was all he had, because his family disowned him because of me. I know how much me attending the party means to him. He has always wished for me to get along with his family. Scott was so excited about the party that he cleared his schedule so we'll be able to attend the party together. He bought me expensive dresses, shoes, and jewelry to complement the looks. We arrived at the party early because he wanted to introduce me to everyone before the party started. He introduced me to his relatives, friends, and colleagues. Everyone was excited to see me except for Scott's immediate family. His mom always accused me of breaking the family and taking away her only son. His sisters never liked me just like their father. So they were all cold towards me. They barely answered my greetings. I, on the other hand, decided to just enjoy the party because I got tired of trying to get their attention. I got so carried away that I got so drunk. Everything was going so well until I went to the restroom. Scott never wanted me to go alone, but I convinced him I wasn't that drunk and that I could take care of myself. I was lying, guys. I didn't want him to miss out on the family reunion. He was so happy catching up with his cousins that I didn't want him to miss anything. It's been a long time since I saw Scott that happy. That's why I didn't want to ruin it for him and decided to go to the restroom alone, even though I was very drunk. On my way to the restroom, I met with Scott's dad, and he asked me to come to his room for a brief chat. I told I wanted to use the restroom, and he told me that he has a toilet in his room and that I could use the one in his room. I was reluctant at first, but I still followed after, imagining how happy it would make Scott when he found out I had a talk with his father. I followed Mr. Alex to his room, and surprisingly, he didn't have any meaningful things to say. He was just blabbing about how I took his only son from him, The next minute, he started caressing my hair, and for a minute, I forgot myself. And the unthinkable happened. I kissed him, guys. I don't know what came over me. I don't know why I didn't leave the room when I found out he didn't have any meaningful things to say. I don't know why I didn't stop him from caressing my hair. I was so drunk that I didn't have control over how I was acting. For a second, I thought Mr. Alex was Scott. I guessed it was the alcohol. I ran out immediately. At the moment, I knew I had messed it up. What surprised me is that Mr. Alex didn't try to stop me from kissing me. He just stood still with his hands raised up. The reason I followed Mr. Alex to his room in the first place was because I thought he wanted to apologize for how he had treated me for the past 2 years. I didn't know he was just setting me up. I ran back to the party room as fast as my legs could carry me. Scott was already looking for me everywhere. He asked me where I was coming from, and I told him I was coming from the restroom. He said he came to the restroom, but I wasn't there. I had to lie to him that I went outside briefly for some fresh air. Somehow he knew I was lying. I could tell from how he was staring at me. Everything happened so fast that I didn't even have time to think about what had just happened. I just made the biggest mistake of my life. I can't believe I kissed my husband's dad. How do I bring myself to explain everything to him? What would happen after he found out I kissed his dad? All these were the thoughts running through my head. I didn't know what to do. I was confused and devastated. All through the rest of the party, I wasn't myself, and Scott noticed. He asked what was wrong with me, and I lied to him that I was just tired. My heartbeat increased when he asked why my lipstick was a mess. I had to come up with something quickly. I told him I bumped into someone on my way from the restroom. Everything happened so fast that I didn't even put myself together. Scott saw how uncomfortable and disorganized I was as asked, we leave the party immediately. It was a silent ride back home. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept wishing I never went to that party. I couldn't believe everything that had just happened. It felt like a dream. I thought everything would go away in the morning, and that I was just having a bad dream, but I was wrong. It was in the morning that the reality of what I have done hit me. I felt bad, Scott. I couldn't believe I betrayed his trust. He literally fought with his entire family, especially his dad, just to be with me. I felt bad for betraying him. He doesn't deserve this. I felt terrible, guys. I wanted the ground to open so I could disappear. I wanted everything to just go away, but how? I wanted to run away because the more I saw Scott, the more guilty I felt. I decided to confess everything to Scott and be free from guilt. While I was planning on confessing everything to Scott, I got a call from Mr. Alex, Scott's dad. He asked me to come and see him alone if I wanted to save my marriage. I didn't want to go, but at that point I was desperate. I told Scott I wanted to hang out with my friends and went. He asked us to meet in a hotel, but I insisted we must meet in an open place. He asked me to meet him in the office then. I arrived at his office and I met him in a meeting. His secretary asked me to wait at the waiting room and that the meeting would soon be over. After the meeting was over, Mr. Alex called me in. He had this mischievous smile on his face. I have never seen him smile before. He never smiled at me before, so it felt kind of strange. He offered me coffee and I refused. I asked him why he wanted to see me, and he said he wanted to save my marriage. He asked me what I intend to do after what happened at the Happy. I told him I was planning on confessing everything to Scott. He told me I shouldn't do that, because Scott might never forgive me. He told a man can lose everything but never his ego, that Scott's ego would be broken when he finds out I kissed him. He gave me 1,000 reasons why I shouldn't confess everything to Scott. He told me telling Scott everything will break their family, and how he misses his son and he doesn't want to lose his only son. He said he wanted his family back and that his family would never be complete without Scott. He practically begged me not to confess to Scott. He also told me he has accepted me fully as his son's wife, as he is tired of fighting Scott because of me. He told me he sees how happy Scott is with me, and nothing else matters to him than his only son's happiness. Everything he was saying felt too good to be real. I couldn't believe my ears. I've always dreamed of the day Mr. Alex would finally accept me as his daughter-in-law, but I never envisioned it to be this way and manner. I was happy and sad at the same time. I wasn't comfortable with the idea because Scott and I promised to never lie to each other. We promised to always tell each other the truth, so I was a bit reluctant. Mr. Alex promised me that no one would hear what happened that day if I decided to follow his advice. I agreed to keep everything to myself and not confess to Scott. That was another wrong decision. I wished I never listened to Mr. Alex. I wish I just followed my instincts and confessed everything to Scott. I became a shadow of myself. I was always lost in thought. The guilt was eating me up. One day, Scott got a call from his dad. He was so excited because that was the first time his father was calling him in 2 years. His dad invited Scott and I over for dinner at their family house. Scott was excited. He was jumping up and down like a baby that was handed candy. He asked me to get ready so that he would pick me up after work. I didn't want to go because seeing his dad would make me relive that bad memory. But I didn't want to say no either because Scott would suspect something is wrong. He has already started suspecting me. I didn't want to add to it. So I decided to go to the family dinner with him. We arrived at the family dinner, and everyone was hostile to me as usual. Mr. Alex ignored me and went straight to embrace Scott. He told him he had an announcement to make after dinner. For some reason, I felt uneasy. Deep down, I knew whatever announcement Mr. Alex wanted to make wasn't going to favor me. At that moment, I just wanted to confess everything to Scott, but he was busy having a discussion with his mom. I didn't want to interrupt them because I knew how much they missed each other, so I waited. The next minute, Mr. Alex stood up and nothing prepared me for what happened next. The embarrassment I got that day is still fresh in my memory. The next thing I saw on the TV screen was a video of me kissing Mr. Alex with his hands raised up. While I was still trying to make sense of what was happening, the conversation I had with Mr. Alex at his office was also played, but the conversation was doctored. It was at that moment I realized that everything was properly planned. The video only showed when I kissed Mr. Alex, and not the beginning of everything. It was then I understood why he raised his hand while I was kissing him. He was just trying to pass a message. Even our recorded conversation was doctored to suit the narrative he was trying to pass. Mr. Alex went on to lie to everyone about the event that transpired between us. He told them how I tried to seduce him because I wanted money, and how I came to his office the following day to beg him not to disclose what happened to Scott. Guys, I was too stunned to speak. I couldn't believe my ears. Scott was speechless. I saw tears in his eyes and I felt sorry for him. Everyone looked at me with so much hate. I felt so sorry for Scott. I ran to him to explain everything to him, but he refused to listen. He left angrily. I tried to run after him, but Scott's mom stopped me and slapped me. He asked me why I had decided to destroy his poor son's life, and that I even went as far as kissing her husband. She threw me out after raining curses at me. I was mute all through. I couldn't even utter a word. I took a cab and went home. To my greatest surprise, Scott wasn't at home. I waited for him all through, but he never came home that night. The following morning, he arrived and started throwing my things out. I tried explaining everything to him, how it actually happened, but he didn't believe me. He said he has seen enough evidence, and I cannot manipulate him any longer. I told him how everything happened, but he still paid deaf ears to everything I was saying. He told me how he regretted the day he met and wished he never went against his family for me. I explained to him how his dad set me up and he is trying to break us apart. He refused to listen. All efforts to calm him down were in vain. He even went as far as setting my things on fire. He burnt all my clothes and documents. He told me he was done with the marriage and I should get out of his life for good. While I was still trying to plead with him, the lawyer arrived with divorced papers and I was forced to sign the divorce papers. Scott threatened to leak the video on social media if I don't sign the divorce papers. I got scared and signed it. After signing the divorce papers, he threw me out of the house and threatened to ruin my life completely. I left the house empty-handed. He didn't allow me to go with anything. I was practically chased out like a cheap prostitute, and I tried reaching Scott severally, but he never gave me a listening ear. I got so tired that I finally decided to accept my fate. I decided to go squat with my friend till I'm able to stand on my feet again. I was penniless. Scott made me stop working immediately after our marriage. He provided everything I needed, so I didn't have a single penny to my name. I got the biggest shock of my life when my parents called me crying that they were homeless. Apparently, Scott had chased them away from the house he bought for them a year ago. Listening to my parents cry over the phone broke me into pieces. I didn't know what to do. My parents sold their old house 2 years ago so they could pay for my brother's tuition. This was before I met Scott. My parents were retired civil servants. They couldn't afford to train my little brother and sister at the same time, so they had to sell their house and move to a shared apartment. A year ago, Scott gifted my parents a newly built house. How could he chase them away from the house he willingly gifted them? At that point, I started developing a strong hatred for him. How can he ruin my life because of a single mistake? Not just my life, but he is also ruining my parents' life. Scott also did another terrible thing. He stopped paying for my brother's school fees. My brother was in an aviation school. His fees were expensive. That was why my parents sold their house in the first place. Scott started paying my brother's school fees after we met and promised my parents that he would make sure my brother graduates, because my brother was at the verge of dropping out before Scott stepped in. He also gives my siblings pockets money. He also canceled the knee surgery he booked for my dad and took his back. One by one, he started destroying everything he has ever done for me. I couldn't believe he was capable of such an act. If someone had told me Scott was that heartless, I would have bet with all my heart that it was a lie. Nothing made sense to me any longer. Everything escalated quickly. I didn't know what to do. My parents were homeless. My brother has been sent off school because Scott informed the school authority he wasn't going to be his sponsor any longer. My parents had to move back and continued living in a shared apartment. Life never made sense again. Everything felt like a dream. I decided to go look for a job in a saloon, but the pay was so little. I decided to just accept the job when I got tired of moving around and looking for a job. Few months later, after the divorce was finalized. Sorry guys, I forgot to mention. I didn't get alimony because Scott and I signed a prenuptial agreement before the wedding. I was the one that suggested the idea because I didn't want to seem like I was getting married to him because of his money, but I still regret that decision till today. It was a foolish move. So, a few months later, Scott married again, this time to the lady his dad chose. I heard the lady is the daughter of Mr. Alex's friend. Guys, I'm sobbing as I'm writing this now. My life never remained the same after that Christmas party. I wish I never got drunk at that party. I couldn't believe my marriage of 2 years had ended and that my husband is married to another woman now. How can Scott punish me for something I didn't have control over? I was drunk. It wasn't a conscious decision. But I don't blame. He only acted based on what he saw. I still blame myself for everything that happened. I take full responsibility for everything that happened, deep down in my heart. I know Scott would have forgiven me if I'd confessed everything to him immediately. I mean, he saw how drunk I was. He would have understood I was under the influence of alcohol. Everything wouldn't have gone so bad if I hadn't listened to Mr. Alex's stupid advice. A chameleon can never change. I don't know how I foolishly fell into his trap. When Scott and I got married 2 years ago, I never knew a day would come when we would get divorced. I thought it was going to be a forever thing, so that one would have thought that Scott's obsession to destroy my life would stop after he got married. But that's wrong. One day, I woke to my phone binging with notifications. My battery got flat in the process that I had to power it up. I opened my phone and I saw different tags. Apparently, Scott and his family had uploaded the video of me kissing Mr. Alex. The video was on every blog. People that knew me were calling me. The video was tagged the gold digger that tried to seduce her father-in-law. Of course, the face of Mr. Alex was perfectly covered, while mine was exposed. Everyone was calling me names and judging me. It got so bad I had to resign at the hairdresser salon because people started recognizing me and mocking me. I'm leaving every single day in regret. Update. One would think that I have suffered enough, right? Well, guess what, guys? That's not true. People would come to the saloon just to abuse me and call me all manner of names. Tears became my food. I cried to bed every day. I never thought Scott was serious when he vowed to destroy my life. I thought it was just empty threats. I never knew he was going to upload the videos. I got so tired of everything. I couldn't breathe very well. I was exhausted. I thought everything was just a horrible nightmare and that I would soon wake up. But that never happened. Every day I only prayed for strength to live. My parents and siblings were the only will I had to live. I wish Scott nothing but the best. I know he acted out of anger, and his anger is justified. He only acted based on what he saw. Maybe if I had confessed everything to him, things would have been different. But I know it's too late now. Even if Scott finds out the truth today, I know we can never be together again, because he is already married to someone else. Maybe we were never really destined to be together forever. I will cherish the few years of our marriage forever. I chose to remember only the good because he is the best thing that has ever happened to me, and our marriage was beautiful while it lasted. That's my story, guys. I hope we learn from it. Don't ever keep anything from your partners, and don't ever get married to anyone that the parents don't approve of you. It will always end in tears. At the end of the day, those people will make sure they frustrate you in the marriage. Another free advice is please never sign a prenup, ladies. Please don't be a fool like me. Lowell, thanks and goodbye.